And welcome everyone to the Shitlord Preachers podcast. This is episode 35. My name is Amos Joseph. I'm joined by my friend Brook Potter, my co-host today. How's it going, Brook?
It's going well, Amos. 35 episodes, and this is a big one. There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the world.
A whole lot going on. So
there is a lot. So let's get into it.
So basically, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, just a bit of history. The Shitlord Preachers podcast is basically where my friend Brook Potter and I both former preachers, reformed shitlords, basically have discussions not only with each other, but also with any guests that we have on. But for the first time, well, I shouldn't say for the first time. For the second time, we are with recent events. We've for the past few episodes, we were hosted by the Think Liberty Network, and this will be our first episode that we're basically letting everyone know that due to the changes that had basically been taking place with Think Liberty and their becoming part of Being Libertarian, both big Facebook pages for basically liberty-minded individuals. With the direction that they were going, it was different than the direction that we were trying to take the Shitlord Preachers show into. So due to that, we had to leave the network, but we will still be working with them very closely. I'll still be appearing on the Think Liberty podcast. I'll still be writing for Think Liberty, and contributing where I can. So they said, definitely they'll refer to us, but we just won't be hosted through that network any longer. So we will be going independent again, which brings me to our Patreon, which might not go on much longer. We were looking at Patreon at one point, but with the events that took place with Sargon of Akkad, Bailey Yiannopoulos, and James Alsop, a couple of basically pretty large YouTube channels that were relying on Patreon, they all got shut down, and now you have people like Tim Pool, Ian Miles Chung, and I think David Cullen, a bunch of different people. Dave Cullen, different people have kind of scrambling to leave Patreon and going over to something called Subscribestar. So we are going to get that set up like literally today. So you'll be seeing that in our description below. And as time goes on, we're also going to get this episode, which will be our first episode, on our own iTunes podcast feed. So definitely subscribe to us on iTunes as well as here on YouTube and anywhere else that we'll be looking at, of course, in the future. So now that we got all that out of the way, we got to talk about this Patreon thing with Sargon.
It's crazy, Amos. I mean, he was doing well. I think he was doing close to either $5,000 or almost $10,000 a month, and he's married with kids, and this was kind of his primary income. And to wake up one morning and just poof, money gone. I mean, I don't know if our listeners don't know, the situation is, and I'll try not to get us in trouble for this. There are the terms of service on Patreon, and basically they don't allow certain things on their platform. But we did see with the likes of Lauren Southern, she was removed, and they basically removed her for, I think it was a manifest behavior, some kind of thing. Basically, when she went out with Generation Identity to kind of draw highlights to the migrant crisis, they saw the videos of her doing that, and they pulled her from the platform, saying they didn't want to support that. So that was the first time, somebody's been taken down outside stuff published on Patreon. So Sargon got taken out, apparently, for a 10-month ago live stream that he did on a very small channel where he was basically arguing against some people on the alt-right. And we're not using that word outside its context. These were like ethno-nationalists. And he basically said that their behavior was such that they were acting like a bunch of N-words, right? And I'm not going to say the word because, again, we don't want to get into the same hot water. So anyway, I mean, the stream was never on Patreon. It was never even on his channel, which means his patrons were never supporting that speech. It was an obscure one-time mention in a 2.5-hour stream. So somebody had to literally comb through it and find that to make it an issue. And the context was he was throwing it at these alt-right guys these supposed ethno-nationalist white supremacists or whatever you want to, he's basically trying to stir them up, and he's throwing the word at them. So it wasn't even like denigrating to any kind of person, individual. He was just throwing it at them. And that was taken completely out of context, and whoosh, gone. Now, I do believe he's in contact with them, so hopefully we have to see a resolution. But it turned into a panic. Like, a lot of people are leaving Patreon right now. And the company's actually been calling a lot of their bigger YouTubers and bigger supporters like Tim Pool and these guys to justify why Sargon has been removed. And apparently it's not going over very well. There are a lot of leftists. There are a lot of leftists out there who've said worse things, bigger channels that have actually incited to violence and suicide and other things, and they get a pass. So that's quite disconcerting. What do you think, Amos?
Yeah, I mean, it's taking censorship and sort of control to the next level where, I mean, on one hand, yeah, you're having sort of a horrible, I guess, loop of logic here with, I don't know if you remember, so kind of there was the whole wave with the skeptic community, as it's referred to, with a lot of, so like with Sargon or Andy Worski, some of these guys in the past, when they made certain comments about certain individuals, they would do these response videos. People would get on them like, you're responsible for all your followers for how they treat so and such a person. And then they thought, well, no, of course not. Like, you can't be responsible. And then when they threw it back at, like, leftists, crazy leftists to say, well, your followers are committing violence doing this. Oh, we're not responsible. Now, just basically sort of guilt by association. Just because people follow you or because they're on your platform, you're responsible. And now the left is sort of taking a lot of that similar thinking, applying it to Patreon, applying it to YouTube, applying it to just any platform where individuals can basically are putting out some sort of content. They just say, no, we don't, we're not gonna. They assume that because they're a platform that allows people to put out content, sort of like an institution of free speech almost, or freedom of expression, therefore they're responsible for all content and all expression that comes out of that platform, which is complete bullshit.
Yeah, and it's not limited to these platforms in the sense that, because what was it? Twitter recently had a controversy with what's his name? Kevin Hart? Is it the actor?
Well,
it was
tweets. It was tweets.
It was tweets.
Wait. It was tweets, but also more so actually it was jokes. So jokes in his routines. I remember.
Right.
I actually know the bit they're talking about. So basically he's talking about, like, well, you love your kids, you want to raise them right, and you kind of just want them to, like, be happy with whatever they do. And he goes, but he said, my fear, he's like, my fear is, like, I don't want my kids growing up gay.
Right.
And people are kind of laughing and stuff. And he's like, well, he goes, because I'll take measures. He goes, kids do gay things. Kids are being weird. Kids or whatever. They do stuff. And he goes, so, he goes, I was at a birthday party with my kids, and my son was just, being goofy. He's playing with his friends. And I look over and he's just, grinding on this other boy. And he goes, I couldn't believe it. He goes, I didn't know what to do. I reacted. I smacked him in the face. I knocked him down on the ground. And I just yelled out, stop, that's gay. And that's his whole bit, is just struggling as a parent to, like, deal with the fact that his, trying to keep his kids from being gay, because, I mean, it's not necessarily like a homophobic thing to say. It's just, I mean, think of it this way. If you're you want to be a grandparent, you obviously want your kids to, follow a certain path in life. And well, I don't think it's too ridiculous, but
even gay couples who adopt kind of wish their kids were straight. And this is not common knowledge. Like I have a lot of gay great uncles and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, you hear the story of them if they adopt or if they have kids of their own and stuff, and they're in a same-sex relationship. Many of them actually say, "I hope they don't turn to be gay." And when you ask them why, it says because it's so limiting to who they could actually find love with. because again, homosexuality in the gay community is still very much a minority. So they actually prefer if their kids are straight, just so they can, they have a much bigger dating pool than what's in
Now,
the community.
Why not double that dating pool and just go bisexual?
Well, I guess that is an option if you just want to be greedy. But yeah, I mean, these are real issues, and I think parents should be allowed to raise their kids as they see fit. And Kevin Hart made this statement 10 years ago.
Oh, a while ago.
Yeah, it's a while. It wasn't like something last week. Even Bill Burr, who, I mean, you kind of put me on to his work. There's that whole joke, about, the reason men die early is because they're repressing every fluffy
feeling, every like loving to see every feeling
to hug
a puppy or anything. He goes, we just suppress all of that. He's like, because it's like everything is like, what are you, a fag? He says, here you are, 50 years old, you're out with your buddies and you're having pancakes, and they ask you, and you want banana on your pancakes, and then there you are, and they bring your pancakes with bananas on them, and all your buddies are going to jump on you like, oh, look at him, he's got banana on his pancakes, what a fag. What are you going to shove that banana up your ass like a fag? And then you just fall down face down first, dying, and your last few words is just, what a fag. And then so he's just like, now he goes to a restaurant. It's always, you want banana, what do you want on your pancakes? And, deep down you want banana, but you're just shoving it down inside you. Like, I'm not sucking dick. I'm not sucking dick. You're just trying to repress any possible feeling or accusation that you're gay. And that's how men die early.
It's a funny bit. I mean, you're not just saying that, just for whims. That's actually the skit that he did. So, I mean, we'll probably put links to it if anybody's interested in that. I don't see any outrage for that. I don't see any outrage for those types of jokes. And yeah, it's just, it's kind of ridiculous, And I think with Kevin Hart as well, because he's black. So I think people kind of expected to toe the line for a lot of progressive ideology.
Yep. I mean, you gotta be left leaning. You gotta be PC. You gotta be all this stuff if you're, a minority.
Yeah. You gotta toe the line. Stay on the progressive plantation, as they say.
Exactly. Or as Kanye will even probably go as far as to say the black plantation. Really. Yeah. It's.
We're definitely being demonetized.
Oh, it is the modern day equivalent to, I mean, it's nowhere near actual slavery, but just nowadays the way the left is with how they feel they own the minorities ideologically, it's a modern day equivalent to like a plantation of the ideology plantation of just, no, you work for us, you spew the content, you do this, you gotta, it's a mess.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. And there've actually been a couple studies on this about how white liberals tend to speak down to minorities. So it's the soft bigotry of low expectations, right? So that's why they create these special classes and the oppression Olympics and all this other nonsense, because these people have no kind of independence. They're not necessarily individuals. They're seen as a collective. They're seen as inferior in the minds of these white liberals, and they're in need of the white liberal savior to come and protect them from other white, oppressive forces in the tyrannical patriarchy. That is pure racism. That is absolutely racism.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Racism and even sexism, because there was also the talk of how many white women were voting Republican in the midterm elections, and how women, these left-wing women on, panels on The View and whatnot are all like, how could they be so, huh?
Young Turks.
Oh yeah, there's that. Yeah, how could they be this way? How could they be just so against their own interests? It's like, what?
Yeah, because every woman has to be pro-abortion, pro feminism and all these other different types of things. And if
Pro-left.
you are not,
yeah,
just progressive. I mean, there's left and then there's progressive. I do make the distinction, but yeah,
right.
you've got to be on the progressive wave of things. And if a woman doesn't necessarily fall into those things, if they want to be more traditional, they want to, have a family and all that kind of stuff, they're apparently betraying, the sisterhood of vaginas, and they can't understand it.
Exactly. What was it? Yeah, we want to get into this topic we're talking about today, though. Unless, no, wait, you were talking about Brexit. What's going on with Brexit still? I know
Yeah,
that's a
oh my god,
that's a
so I mean,
continuous thing.
yeah, it's going to be a good opportunity to make some money. Yeah, Theresa May, which is the Prime Minister of the UK, she has just announced that she's postponing the House of Commons vote on her supposed, I guess, exit deal, or withdrawal agreement is the actual word, because she is in for a tremendous defeat in the House of Commons. Nobody, the Brexiteers or the Leavers, are happy with the situation, which basically puts the UK into a vassal state where we still have all the obligations, all of the jurisdictions of the EU, everything else, all of the financial contributions, and we get no representation in the parliament, and we have no any kind of power to kind of hold it off or change any of the agreements. So nobody wants this deal, and she's trying to push it on us like this is the only thing, this is the only viable option, which it's not. But anyway, she realizes she doesn't have the votes in the House of Commons, so she's postponing it, and she's going back to Brussels to try and negotiate some concessions, mostly on the backstop. Everything kind of hinges on the backstop, which is because Northern Ireland is part of the UK and the Republic of Ireland is part of the EU. They're concerned that people are just going to cross the border in Ireland to Northern Ireland and buy cheaper goods because they wouldn't have all the tariffs and all these other types of things. So there's a customs issue, and that's what they're supposedly trying to resolve. And in the original agreement, there was no end date to this supposed backstop. It was just kind of like, well, at some point it will be determined, and at that point, then both parties need to agree to leave. Again, locking us in. We can't leave unless all of the 27 other nations agree on those terms, which could be forever. That could be impossible. That means they could blackmail us for whatever they want. So she's failed, in short. And what's funny about this is, of course, the complete stupidity of what she's been saying. She's saying this is the best possible deal that we could have gotten, and tax money has been spent on propaganda to push that narrative. Now she says she's going to go back and ask for more, which means what she presented wasn't actually the best deal that we could have gotten. She's now going to try and get more concessions. And I don't think that's going to go very well. David Cameron, who was her predecessor, he tried to get concessions from the EU and they didn't budge. So yeah, it's not looking good for her deal. And yeah, it's more than likely going to fall apart. So we'll see. We might actually get some kind of small rebellion similar to what's going on in France at the moment. I don't know if you've seen this, the yellow jackets.
Yellow vests.
Yellow vests? Well, yeah, we say jackets on this side, but yeah.
Do you know why they're actually, we might as well touch on that real quick. You know why they wear the yellow vest, right?
No. Why do they wear the yellow vest?
So the yellow vest is basically in France. It is law that as a person who drives a car, you're required to carry around with you a vest
in the trunk
for protection and stuff like that, just for whatever case you need. And I get that. I mean, safety vests and such, just for visibility in case you're ever in an accident or anything, stuff like that. So that I get. And because that is such a defining thing, that became the symbol of, well, it's fuel tax. And what is, fuel for cars, the vest is sort of the identifying factor. Like, we're all car owners. We all are affected by this. So became the vest. Now the yellow vest movement is now moving to beyond. I think it's going into Belgium, possibly.
Possibly.
And it might even make it over to Canada.
Oh, awesome.
So it's becoming a movement to basically a move against, tyrannical government moves, just this tax hike. And it's even coming back onto American libertarians to say, like, well, at what point there was a good point brought up when I was on the Sarcasm and Liberty live stream the other night. A good point was brought up that was, where is the line drawn for American libertarians to do anything near what the French are doing with their tax problems? For how
Excellent
much
question.
how much libertarians in America are pushing against just criticizing the government for taxation is theft all day long. And we have the memes, we have all the ideas, knowing what exactly kind of taxes we're getting fucked with. Yet we haven't
Yeah.
done anything to really push. We're just sitting here trying to double down on getting a few people in local governments and some state government and almost no federal level, off seat positions. So they figured, at what point is it going to trigger us basically to move? Now, I'm not advocating for any sort of like violent or riot or anything like the French have been doing, although it is undeniable how effective that can be. Libertarians haven't really done any sort of protesting, both peaceful or non-peaceful, like at all. At least
I would say that's accurate.
not on a level that is being recognized like the French are doing. And the French are like, known across the world as sort of just, the French.
Yeah.
Here
Surrender, right? They're known for
yeah.
surrender.
I mean, how their flag should just be a solid white color and all this stuff. And here they are. One tax hike just somehow triggered the movement to stand against the government, and
Yeah.
now it's spreading. So it's kind of it really is putting American libertarians to shame, really.
And even for the British, like there were riots at the time of Margaret Thatcher introducing the poll tax, which was basically a people tax. So a very similar thing, and there were riots in the UK as well, and that kind of stuff. But the French have a history of revolution, right? They do love a revolution in France, not
Yep.
so much in the UK, right? And yeah, everything you said, I don't know too much about it because there's not a lot of information on the ground, right? You got mainstream media kind of reporting on it now because it's all over social media. But I don't fully know what they're still rioting for because Macron has revoked the fuel tax, right? So it's like, okay. And I think the numbers dropped from 100,000 down to like 30,000, which is still a lot. It's still a lot of people on the streets. So it's kind of like, well, what is it now? What are they kind of going for? And I don't think anybody's really sure. I mean, I don't know what you've heard, but I really don't know. I don't know what they're still protesting for.
They want Macron's head.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw they erected a guillotine and with his name on it. It's symbolic. But I mean, come on, that's symbolic. It's this strong reference of the French Revolution.
Yeah.
Which ironically, the people who started the revolution end up getting their heads cut off. But I don't know. What are they still protesting? Do you know? Do you have any idea?
Maybe just, I mean, they're probably protesting taxation just as a whole. Maybe. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not
it
sure.
probably got people seriously trying to get informed, and they realize, holy shit, we got all these more taxes.
Well, I mean, this was like Macron was not. I mean, he's a globalist. He's definitely a Europhile. He's a Europhile. But I don't. He wasn't much for France. Like when he was elected he didn't come out with the French national anthem. He came out with the European national anthem, and he's been kind of the strings have been being pulled with Germany to try and get France to do more in terms of involvement in the EU. But he was actually kind of a capitalist because he cut taxes on businesses and other things like that. And at the same time, this pollution tax, he tried to raise taxes on basically the driving middle class, which is not going to go over very well. So in the French, mentality, it looks like you're giving money to the rich and you're trying to squeeze the poor. And I mean, I think you and I are both in favor of lower taxes. So I don't know where he's at. I don't know if that's what the French people are kind of concerned about, that they think he's too much of a corporate shill.
Probably.
Yes. I would love. I wish we had some people in France that we could talk to and kind of figure this out.
Well, yeah. During the live stream we had with Sarcasm Liberty, we had Ben. Well, he goes on Twitter as Ben the French libertarian, but he's in the UK, but he's been keeping tabs on what's going on there. So at the point we talked to him, he was just explaining the basic idea of the vest and the tax, because at that time, this was like last week, it was like basically they protested. Then Macron said, yeah, well, I'll suspend that tax for 6 months. And they're like, fuck you. We want it completely suspended, like gone forever. And then now he's actually done that. But they're still out there. I mean, the numbers have dropped, so it's probably just like a simmering down, if anything.
Right.
Maybe there's a few people who are opportunists trying to capitalize on some like just further anti-state, anti-government, anti-establishment, if anything, kind of push. But it's definitely an interesting thing, and I like that it's definitely spreading to other countries, and American libertarians definitely got to take note of that.
I mean, would you be in favor of that? Like, what would get you out to a march and a protest in the US?
Some sort of a huge income tax hike,
like Obamacare.
It actually never affected me directly that much. It was only ever a problem. I mean, I came close to having to deal with it a couple times with my taxes being sort of the penalty for not having, I think it was, you needed 10 out of 11 months, 10 out of the 12 months of the year, you had to have coverage to avoid the ACA, Affordable Health Care Act penalty, which was either like $800 some or like a percentage of your income or something. It was just some ridiculous number, and it would just be taken directly out of my tax return, which was just going to be not good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tax. It would have been a tax. Either you're forced to pay for the health insurance, or you hit with a penalty, which is basically a tax.
Yeah.
So that didn't get you on the streets. You didn't go to like did you vote Republican at least?
So 2012, I didn't vote.
Blasphemy.
Yeah.
Wow.
But 2016, I voted Gary Johnson. But I mean,
that's good.
Seeing how things are going with the Libertarian Party, I really don't know what to do about voting. I mean, I'm starting to some of the more ANCAP sentiments towards not voting starting to rub off on me a little bit.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. I mean, we're even worse off than you in that respect, but at least we do have minority parties in the House of Commons.
Yeah, I mean, I can see a lot of benefit of the system that the UK has with your political parties, how your parliament is broken up. Yeah. If anything, it might be a good idea for America to adopt or something. I don't know.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, what would save? Yeah, go ahead.
Not like, obviously not to the degree that Parliament is sovereign, but
no, yeah, that's all that's left of a constitution in this country. But no, I think there is, for some reason, we have been kind of liberal when it comes to additional parties. So it hasn't always just been Labour and Conservative, which would be like the Democrats and the Republicans. We do actually have some variety. The Scottish National Party, UKIP had a number of seats at one point, which was the United Kingdom Independence Party. We have an independent guy. I can't remember what his name is. I think it's Buchanan, and he is an independent for the Party for Justice for Men and Boys. So he's kind of like an anti-fascist, really good guy. So yeah, we do have kind of a mix. I don't know how we do that because we still have first past the post, generally speaking. We've also got the Liberal Democrats. They had a shot. They were in coalition with Cameron. So at least, I don't know how it works, but somehow we have managed to get other parties into the House of Commons. That's a very rare thing in the US. I don't think you'll have very many independent senators, or
You get like one.
and who's
maybe.
that?
No, but I mean, usually you're getting like one
Yeah.
every 10 years or something.
Yeah,
Like I don't even know.
did Bernie
Like
Sanders eventually was an independent? I can't remember.
he probably was at one point.
Yeah, it might
But
have
then
been.
then he was then the left. The Democrats kind of went, oh wait, democratic socialism, and he was like, oh yeah, I'll toe that.
But you see, he always had the problem with guns because Vermont, I think, has one of the highest gun ownerships, but also the lowest crime.
Yeah,
And that's where he and the Democratic Party parted ways, I
he
suppose.
actually had a better NRA rating than some other of his counterparts. His yeah, it was just the weirdest thing because you can't really argue with the results. So
Yeah.
I mean, then you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She wants to sign bills into law. uh she said that. She said
Oh
she
my
wanted to sign
goodness.
bills into law. She wanted to take over, win the three chambers of government. Um,
The House, the Senate, and the
and the
executive.
president and the
And the
presidency.
president.
It's like, wait, what? Yeah, 70% landslide win. Like,
That was
what
what, New
the
Jersey or New York?
New York? But it just her
New York
specific
Senate.
area was very left leaning. So
Yeah.
and there was no way she was going to lose. But it's just like you get a 70% landslide win in a region that is not going to vote anyone else, and you're just a complete idiot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I don't know much about it, but I have heard the stories. I mean, I don't know if you've, oh, go ahead.
We need to invent technology that hasn't been invented yet. That's what she said at a green global warming kind of talk or something. That's how we're going to combat
Yes.
climate change. We need to invent things that haven't been invented yet.
Yes. Yes. We call that the master of the obvious reasoning.
Exactly.
What I don't know if you've seen this whole thing, but there's now single party voting taking place in California. In terms of because of gerrymandering and other things, they know that they're not going to get necessarily. There are just some seats that are guaranteed Republican, guaranteed Democrat, and you might have a sacrificial lamb candidate, but they don't have any power and they don't have any say. So they've devised literally single party, or what's called the best of two. So everybody comes together and stuff like that, and you can literally get two Democrats running against each other and two Republicans running against each other. So instead of having that guarantee, yeah, this is my seat, they actually have to compete a little bit and kind of pander to the other voters because you're splitting the vote a little bit, before you get elected. So
so what
so
is the
you're going to
right?
get a Democrat. It's like, which Democrat? Or you're going to get a Republican, but which Republican?
I mean, you're going to basically get your center right, and then you're going to get your center left and left.
Correct.
Whether
So
it's
it's
going to
single
be,
party.
yeah,
Yeah.
who's going to be more socialist or who's going to be more conservative.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, this is the state in California. What do you, I mean, but what they say happens is because they can't bash the other guy, right? So the politics apparently gets a little cleaner because you can't attack the other people's base because really and truly that's your base as well, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a mess. But
And as a third party, they say, well, maybe because you're third party, you might actually have a little more power to go to the candidate and say, well, look, these are our concerns. You need our endorsement. This is what we want.
right.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. I don't know too much about it, but something.
Yeah, but we gotta let's get into this topic though that we were gonna. It's the title of the episode. So we're addressing the question of hypergamy. Now, hypergamy is a term that we use in among basically red pill men, and as well as there's other sort of sub categories under red pill that use the word. Other sort of groups use the word. But hypergamy, Brooke, how would you define hypergamy yourself? I'll define mine, but you go ahead first.
I think we have a very similar definition. So hypergamy in the context of the conversation is the mating strategy for women their desire to marry up to either somebody with financial ability, good genetics, or status. And there's a whole evolutionary reason why that's the case, and we'll probably get into it. But yeah, so if I was doing it, basically, it's the mating strategy for women to seek better than themselves in some kind of breeding partner.
Right. So yeah, I pretty much date the mating strategy of women to find a partner who has social status, financial status, or some sort of genetic physical status, so like a really good looking guy, a really rich guy, or a very powerful guy, some sort of social influence. So you can see this in different things. I mean, usually if you have one, you have probably another. So if you have social status, you're likely to probably have some financial status. If you have physical status, you're going to have some financial status.
Well, not
Let's say,
necessarily. But
well,
yeah.
I'm not necessarily, but I mean, you could. Like, if you're
Yeah.
a really, really good looking guy, you're probably going to have some
I know a lot
money
of
coming in
poor
for that.
musicians, like the rock star looking guys that might be looking pretty cool, but they're broke as fuck, yeah. So, but they're still getting laid, right?
Yeah, because of hypergamy. But I mean, in some cases, you have one, maybe two of these things are matched up because of how society kind of is. Social influence will probably, and if you have a lot of money, you're most likely going to have probably some social influence too. That's what I'm saying. Is like these three categories kind of connect with each other sometimes.
Could you give examples of each? Could you like name somebody who's got money, status?
Well, I mean, yeah, you have you have someone like Donald Trump who has money and social influence, obviously.
Yes.
And
he's pretty tall. His hair is a disaster, but I mean, he did manage to like bag 3 pretty decent wives at the time.
Yeah. And then,
Would
but
say
then
that?
then you have obviously you have like men who are very good looking, who maybe go into some sort of a modeling career or even become an actor or something, and they'll
Like a
obviously
George
get
Clooney.
and then they'll obviously get the money aspect of that because of their looks.
Right.
And then you have the if you have money, yeah, I mean Trump is equally like the money and the social influence, but he's a very rare case. So if you have one of those three, you might have the second one, depending upon how you use that first one.
Sure. I'll just add to that there is the dark side to this hypergamy in the sense that you could also be infamous, not just famous. And I mean, there's a recent study on some of these ridiculous strangling, stranglers and mass murderers and stuff like that, and even people in prison who actually get women competing for their affection, even though they're like mass.
Right. I mean, yeah, sort of the bad boy
Yeah,
attract
yeah.
gone.
Yeah,
Crazy.
exactly. So I think it's is it hypophilia? I can't remember the exact term for it. But like there's a recent research that was a recent study that was done about like women watching for porn, and they're basically looking for more aggressive kind of hate fucking, strangulation type things. That seems to be like a very high percentage of women are looking for that kind of thing.
I mean, yeah, when sort of that kind of backs up even some of the studies that have been done on rape fantasies, how there's a surprising high number of women who have a tendency to enjoy some sort of a rape or sort of dominating situation where they're overwhelmed or just extremely dominated by a person. And it's like, with such a push against with this prevalence of talking about the rape culture in America apparently has, it's surprising how many women actually want to be dominated.
Not raped, but dominated.
Dominated,
yeah.
Which can, I mean, it's anywhere from strong sort of domination in that context of sex to full blown women that actually want to be raped. It's a spectrum.
Right. Yeah, and we don't know any women who want to be raped, but as you say, it is a spectrum. I mean, it's basically 50 Shades of Grey, right? I mean, women made 50 Shades of Grey. The the best selling book that it was, and I don't know any men that went to see 50 Shades of Grey.
It's like how, what was
And
it?
the
50
sequel.
Shades of Grey was the best selling book like in early 2010s era, like
Yeah.
2010. No, what was it? 2012 was like when it first came out. I think like so many people I knew, like women that I knew, not only just like women I came across in like conversations or like, but even just like some of my family had the book.
Yeah. And
Women
you've
in
got
my
a relatively conservative family, right?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We'll just say it's the family members you've met, Brooke. One of them had the
Oh,
book.
wow. Why am I not entirely surprised?
So yeah. So yeah, we've yeah.
I mean, just to kind of put a spin on this, right? So it's not that we're advocating anybody being raped,
Nope.
but one of the strong masculine traits is strength, right?
And
And
what is a demonstration of strength but sort of a nearly overwhelming dominating
yeah,
presence action
yeah,
in the
exactly,
context of sex, you know?
exactly.
Women that want to
So
be choked, women that want to be
not
tied
choked to
up,
death, just choked, so a
just
little
choked, like a
choking,
little choking,
pulling,
pulling of
yeah, hair
hair,
pulling.
donkey punch.
Girls really like it, just this is a free dating tip for anybody who's out there who might be listening. If you want to, like, I used to do this a lot. If you want to turn a girl on, there are two things you could do, right? So I would like go up to a girl, and I don't know why this works, but if you go up over her shoulder and you sniff, like just over her shoulder, like her perfume or something, like right about there. For some reason, that triggers something inside of them that's very primal, and it's arousing. And the second thing is if you put your hand in their hair and you just kind of ball your fist. You don't pull it, you don't yank it. You just kind of ball the back of the head and let it go. That's very primal, right? You see that taking place in the animal kingdom, and for some reason, women seem to have inherited that. So again, I mean that's a bit of an aside, but shows of dominance and stuff like that is very appealing, and especially in the realms of hypergamy, it is one of the genetic stocks is you're showing strength. So
Yeah. I mean,
let's get
I've
into it.
seen the GIF that someone posted. It was basically all it is someone is like behind a couple of girls at like some high school football game or something, and some guy just goes up. You just see a hand reach out, so it's like someone holding the camera. A hand reach out and pulls on this girl's ponytail, and he didn't like yank. He stood a pull, and she kind of did this. Turns around, gives him the most turned on look.
Really?
Like just look back, like smiling at him, and I'm like, what the hell? Like it was just showing, like, oh, found out someone's kink or whatever.
That's her
Just
spot. That's her spot.
it just well, he
So
just pulled the ponytail, just kind of pull, and she kind of did a slight move back and looked back at him like turned on, and I'm like, yeah, like we joke about that. You see that in some meme or a GIF, like I saw it, and we think that's hilarious, but it's so prevalent among women that not like a majority, obviously, but it's out there that people would be surprised to know that it's actually a thing. They with this movement of feminism that is so against pretty much anything you can do in a bedroom to, what is this, enthusiastic consent or affirmative consent, all this stuff is so gone overboard that you can't do anything in a bedroom but just, I mean, have starfish sex.
what the hell is starfish sex? What's that?
Laying there not doing a single thing.
Oh, I've never heard that term before.
Like the guy, like, men complain about women being like a starfish because, like, imagine a person like a starfish just laying there.
Right.
So
With
they
like
say
her hand, is she tied
just
or is she just
just
laying
laying
there?
there.
Right. Okay.
So they say, like, men call it starfish sex when they're having that with a woman that's just not doing anything. But with the way feminism is pushing how we look at sex, how it's supposed to be approached, it's like men are going to become the starfish now because we can't touch them, we can't talk to them, we can't do anything, like, except just do the dirty act and just be
And,
done.
and and this obviously explains why so many women are seeking, you know, this type of fantasy in their porn searches, looking for more aggressive, you know, kind of hardcore sex. But I mean, I don't know if we expected to go down the hardcore sex route, but
no.
Let's bring it back to the hypergamy.
So,
and yeah,
so yeah, hypergamy to me, yeah, I guess. Well, let me think about it a little bit while you share a story about how you've encountered it. Like, how have you seen it in your life, Brooke?
oh man, hypergamy is definitely a real thing. To go back to probably my earliest relationship, I was, I don't know, about 15 at the time, so it's like my first serious girlfriend that I had. And I mean, I fully admit I was a cuck, I was a beta, I had no fucking clue what I was doing. It was like my first real girlfriend, first girl kind of thing. And you know, after I think about a year together with her, things started to wane. It started to, you know, I became annoying to her. Basically, I was like too much. I was smothering her. And I remember that she eventually broke it off with me, and I was devastated, as you are with your first love. And I remember she got together with a guy who was exactly like me, except that he had a car and he could drive. And that, I didn't understand it at the time, but it definitely stuck out to me. Even to this day, I remember that whole experience. And I think he was kind of like, he was a tutor for what like an examination. He was like her extra lessons teacher or something like that at some kind of, you know, extra lessons school that was going on. But that was like the first encounter that I had with hypergamy. I didn't know what it was then. I see what it is now. It's like, yeah, there were aspects of me that she probably liked, and there was obviously a lot that she didn't like, to the point where she wanted to get rid of me. But she could get a lot of the things she liked, plus a car, by going out with this other guy.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty direct line of hypergamous sort of hypergamous decision.
Correct. And I found out many years later she started dating this guy. I wouldn't say his name, but he came from a rather wealthy family. And I mean, I did not come from a very wealthy family and stuff like that. And I always remembered this guy was like, oh my God, he was a pincushion. He was a marshmallow. He had no spine. He had no charisma, you know, nothing. But he did have a lot of money. And I remember, you know, she was pushing to marry him and all that different kinds of stuff. And I mean, it didn't work out. And I believe she's a single mom at this point. Maybe not for him, but for somebody else, you know. But yeah, I started to notice these things very early on. So that was like in my early teens, early 20s. And even in my preaching days, this was something I noticed. When you were in a service or some kind of gathering and you're preaching, you're going to get the attention of women.
Yep.
Now, yeah, Amos could attest to this. Like when we did conferences and stuff like that, I pretty much ignored every woman in any kind of scenario, unless they can talk to me directly about something scriptural or whatever. But for the most part, I ignored women at these things because I knew there was this kind of hypergamy. It's a status, like in the realms of Christianity, to be a minister and a preacher and stuff like that. That's pretty high status in that world. But I used to see it all the time.
You knew about this back then. Well, I didn't.
Right. What was your experience? Can you point
to? So this actually did happen, and Brooke knows very well about this. We did a conference with the group we were with about how many speakers were there, Brooke? Like
there
15?
Were a lot. It was like a week long.
We did a whole week. So most Christian conferences you kind of limit it to like 3 days maximum.
Yes.
And we did a full week. We kind of were really pretty ambitious with that. But anyways, so we
three speakers a day. So it was a lot
in some cases.
Sometimes 4, yeah.
Yeah, some people spoke multiple times. You know, some certain people in leadership would speak to like introduce the day, kind of start the day, while others kind of got little slots in there. I spoke, Brooke spoke, some other, you know, a lot of friends we had, you know, had at this thing were also speakers. They spoke, and I remember I spoke on something just pretty, I guess, considerably like, you know, kind of an intense thing, very more down to earth, not like sort of high level academia, scripture analysis and whatnot, but I spoke on some things, and a lot of it got quite a good. A lot of people received it really well and such. So, um, so here I was. I'm the youngest guy at this event. I think I was like 20. I was 20. That's right. Yep, because I remember, yeah, I turned, this was August, and I turned 21 that following month. So we did this whole thing, and yeah, and I mean, and Brooke, obviously, like I said, he knew a lot about these concepts of hypergamy and sort of female nature, but little bits and pieces he'd kind of share with me, but never like the actual concepts themselves. I mean, I remember, yeah, Brooke, you remember there was an individual before that girl I talked to before that you were kind of helping coach me through the process, and then we eventually met this person. So I met this girl, and she was she kind of confessed she always wanted to marry, what we called back then a man of God, and all this stuff. And as time went on, as Brooke and myself sort of moved away from ministry, that sort of hypergamous attraction, if you'll say, kind of wore off.
Right.
And there were other things too, but that was my experience. And now I look back and see, like, that's, it's hypergamy isn't necessarily just as a general thing, but it can happen in specific contexts, specific
Correct.
realms of just influence you have, among Christians, among heck, I mean, even just among academia. You see someone like, for example, Jordan Peterson, sort of at the
Yes.
very high level within his field, very well known. That hypergamy is now to a different level, which which can very much make him more attractive to his wife, as well as I mean, I've even come across women who watch him and that say they just find him very attractive. And it's not just the fact that he definitely is a guy who's in shape, takes care of himself, but also, I mean, there is a hypergamy component to it, that he is saying what he's saying, sharing what he's sharing at a very high level of sort of recognition and influence.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Jordan Peterson is a good example. Yeah, I remember your experience with that. I had a similar thing in Malaysia. Sorry, in Singapore and Thailand. We had a girl who she was kind of I don't want to use the word groupie, but she was definitely a fan of the group, and it was
the one
just
that got married.
she eventually did get married to somebody we both know, and
Yep. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
the fame that she wanted.
Yep.
But we're not, we're not going to say anything about that. But yeah, it was just very obvious from the early onset that she wanted to get married and she wanted to be part of this movement and part of the ministry and all that good stuff. And I saw it, and I'm like, I'll treat you with respect. You're my sister and all that good stuff. And I didn't play the game at all. And she tried to play with me, and I was just like, no, move along.
I mean, even one of the people that came with us.
Yeah.
There was that. I heard about that. There was a whole thing there. Just any context or pretty much any context where we dealt with women in ministry, whether it was someone coming with us, someone on the team with us, someone following us along the different, locations we go to. There was, being younger Amos wasn't quite noticing this, but now I look back, I'm just like, oh my gosh, hypergamy everywhere.
Now, with that said, let's just make it clear. Hypergamy is not necessarily a bad thing, right? We are all here as the product of hypergamy in some degree, and it's necessary, right? It's necessary because again, women, they're going to be bearing the children for 9 months. They want to make sure that the children are healthy. They want to make sure that the children are taken care of and that they're protected in case, while they're pregnant, they can't defend themselves and all these other things. And this is where hypergamy has evolved. And so it's inherently, it's not necessarily a bad thing. But, and this is a video that I did, with the advent of feminism, like not just feminism, but what we have now is the third wave feminism and kind of anti-male rhetoric that's been coupled with hypergamy. It has changed the game. It has destroyed what used to be the social contract between the sexes and how dating and these other things were
Right. I
done.
mean, what was it? How it's interesting. You look at the very basic behaviors we had, let's say as hunter gatherers. You had the alpha male, you did have these women, and you got to think what is the most evolutionarily fit thing to do? What would promote the best fitness? The survival of the fittest. Well, the strongest men would have to spread their seed. So then our reproductive, not just our mating strategy, but also our reproductive capabilities have changed. A man has essentially unlimited or uncapped ability to impregnate.
For many, many years, mind you.
Whereas women don't. Um,
Correct.
and that reflects in their mating strategies too. Men try to find the best women try to find the best man try to find
Plenty
basic
women.
basic, I mean, yeah, basic viability. Just, can you have kids? Are you available? Will you do it? All right, get going. Whereas women are like, I got to be careful who I give this to, who gets this egg to have it that I have the child for. And now here we are, thousands of years after the fact of these basic strategies becoming now uh, basically innate to the way we do things. It reflects in our society on a larger scale with how men are viewed in so many different contexts and how women are viewed in many contexts too. So
Yeah, I would agree, and it's made dating very difficult. I don't know because I know you're part of the Red Band group. I think one of them was posting up, or was it you? You sent me the link, like requirements for my boyfriend. He's got to make at least $2.5 million a year, and he's got to be at least what 5'9" or 6'1" or
six foot
something.
three or something.
6'3", right? And somebody as kind of trolling this person is like, would you take somebody who's only making 2.2 million a year? I just want to see what my options are. It wasn't you that sent me that. I can't remember.
I sent you that. That's not Red Man Group though. That was just on Twitter.
Okay, that was just on Twitter. But this is an example of hypergamy, and why it has become pernicious is because of the feminist narrative that women basically are the greatest, that they're entitled to the best, they are not responsible for anything. That responsibility, because of the state, has now been put on to men. So if you get pregnant out of wedlock, the state will take care of you. If you don't like your husband anymore, there's no fault divorce, and you can divorce rape him and get all the prizes. And there's so much entitlement given to women in this environment. The hypergamy nature has now been skewed, where 20% of men, which is like the cream of the crop of what men are
Maybe
now
less.
attracting, and even less really, are now in competition with 80% of the women. And that's unsustainable. That's absolutely unsustainable.
Yeah, and so you had these different social conventions, as Rolla likes to put it, contracts, social customs we really had that sort of kept these things in check, like marriage, like just the social stigma towards being a thought, being a slut, such things like that.
Yeah, slut shaming, being a single mom.
Right. I mean, and it's not to necessarily shame on an individual level, no, but on a larger social level, just as a civilization, that is needed to keep this in check. To where now we have the skewing is basically it's um as I look at it, you kind of have a scale sort of balancing. You have these different things that balance sort of basically you have hypergamy on one side, so female dating strategy, mating strategy. and now you have what's men's mating strategy. So the men's equivalent to what is hypergamy to women. So it's not hypergamy for men. It's I forgot exactly what it would be called, but women is basically find the best man. Men's dating strategy is what is called basically unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. Just or you could just say fuck everything that moves. Spread the seed. So you have these two competing, I guess that wouldn't be really
competing mating strategies.
Competing mating strategies. And so you have the scale over here of hypergamy. You have just feminism. There's an extra weight. So then it kind of tilts one way. You have you have feminism, you have no fault divorce, you have abortion, you have a lot of these things. And I'm not addressing these in any sort of pro or anti this. This is just the scale. This is just things that are going to start skewing sort of the power, if anything. You talked about sort of the responsibility and authority. Men have all the responsibility, but none of the authority, whereas women have all the authority and none of the responsibility. We've already skewed this. So you have all this weight on the scale. And so what's going on is now you're 20% of men, your shrinking percentage of the 20% of the best men have to then sort of double down on becoming more and more masculine men. And it kind of, I shouldn't say that. You kind of
20% are pretty fucked is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, because it's not 20% anymore. That gets smaller and smaller, and what can happen is the backlash is going to be a problem. Sort of, and here's by trying to offset the issues of all this, basically favoring what's called the female imperative, the feminine. What is it? Feminine social primary. Just
gynocentrism,
misandrism, matriarchy, as opposed to patriarchy. The scale could break because the backlash is going to basically say, you have like a pound on each side. That's been kind of tinkered with, kind of balanced with how we've gone about society for hundreds of years. And then feminism comes in and says, here, we're going to quadruple the weight on this side. So now you have a pound on one side, 4 on the other. And it's just going to keep adding on until it's, a full ton on one side. And then the men are going to come in with a backlash and just say, fuck you, we're going to put 2 tons on. Now the scale breaks.
Yeah.
And you have society kind of screwed.
I mean, this is somewhat what we're seeing at the moment. And I mean, this is what's given rise to MGTOW. I don't know very much about the incel movement, but at least in the perception is that this plays a lot into that, is because they don't think they're part of that top 20% or even smaller percentage that women don't find them attractive to want to mate with them and all this other kinds of stuff. So again, a lot of this is kind of skewed in that way. And even and again, it screwed things up for men. I'm not saying that every man, it's not always necessarily good for every man to kind of screw around and have millions of girlfriends and thousands of girlfriends.
Right, because that would be then the skewing towards, then you would actually have a patriarchy.
Correct. But it's become this because there are so many women competing for so few men, and they're not competing, they're competing with each other. Right. So there's almost, as I was telling you, back in my day when you used to go on a date, you just wanted to make out with the woman. But now, because of all the sexual competition, it's like first date blowjobs or sex on the first date. It's like, what woman is going to give more upfront to try and retain a guy? And since women have kind of, they've left the kitchen, they're left domestics, the only thing they're pitching is their body. And men are very happy to accept that payment.
But then fewer and fewer, now it's more competitive among men. So now, I mean, and it changes the way men now have to approach dating, because if she won't do it the first couple of times, if nothing happens in the first date, second date, let alone the third date, the dating strategy, I mean, the model has to then tell us we're fucked, move on to the next woman. Whereas before, I mean, I mean, I'll look on dating apps and I'll actually look at I mean, it's one thing how women want to portray themselves. It's another how things actually go down. But um, the way I look at how dating strategies are nowadays, if a woman is just if she's not doing anything, if nothing's happening, if no chemistry is really building by the second or third date, move on. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we might dedicate a show to kind of discussing, in more detail about, the intergender dynamics and stuff like that. But to go back to the hypergamy thing, did you ever see that video of I think Richard Cooper put it up, of the girl checking out the guy with the Lamborghini in front of her boyfriend? I don't know if you saw that.
No.
No, okay. So I don't know how these guys had it, but there was a Lamborghini, and this girl comes by, a sexy girl, and she's like, "Oh, can I sit in it? Can I take a picture with it and stuff like that?" And her boyfriend is right there, and of course, the guys who own the Lamborghini is like, "Yeah, sure, you could jump in it and stuff like that." And she starts asking all the questions like, "How fast does it go?" And what's the fastest you've taken it up? And her boyfriend is standing right there, and eventually he kind of steps in between, like, "Stop talking to my girl, else I'm gonna break your face," kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "Why? What are you doing? I just want to find out how fast the car is." And he's kind of escorting her away, and only to find out, like, he drives an Audi or something like that. I mean, it's still a good car, but it's not a Lamborghini, right?
Right.
Right. And that was the example Richard Cooper put out as an example of hypergamy. This girl, I mean, I don't know her story. I don't want to assume things, but just in terms of a pure hypergamous example, that is what it is. She's got a guy
Yeah.
that could do well with an Audi, but she wants to be with a guy who's got a Lamborghini.
Oh yeah. So the whole thing that I've noticed with hypergamy, I mean, Rollo Tomassi will say hypergamy is not a straitjacket. I kind of look at hypergamy as sort of, when I explain it, especially if any women are asking me about it. Like, I don't talk to women about red pill who I might be wanting to pursue anything with, but just people on Twitter and such. And we've talked to people about it before. But when talking about it with women, I kind of have to water it down just a little bit just to make it more palatable for them to kind of get it. But I consider it more of a spectrum. So, I mean, taking into consideration the definition of hypergamy just being social status, provision, and possibly some genetic stock involved in that decision-making process. It could be anything from a kind of good-looking guy having a house and a little bit of money in the bank, and just having his shit together, basically, to the higher end of that spectrum of all the money in the world, the best-looking guy you'll ever see, and president of the US.
Right.
Either way, and so you have women that sort of express their hypergamy through just, hey, a small sort of defining difference between being the guy that has his shit together, that rents an apartment, to having his shit together and owning a small house.
Yeah.
Two, full-blown gold diggers, hypergamy of well, I mean, you could say Melania Trump.
I mean, we don't have a lot to say on whether she's a gold digger or not, but
I mean,
she's definitely scored in that department.
Yeah, she's optimized hypergamy to quite a high level. So
yeah. I mean, for us in the UK, it's the Meghan Merkel and Prince Harry. That is like maximized hypergamy. I mean, she can't really do much better than a prince in the royal family. And actually, this was the debate. Like, should they get a prenup? And everybody's kind of like, where is she going to get better than that? Like, they probably don't need a prenup because she's maxed it out, right?
Yeah, you know, even on a small side of losing anything, you're still fine. But yeah, that hypergamy is, it's like I consider it more of a, it's a wide spectrum depending upon how you're choosing. You know, some women choose on smaller details, whereas some women might choose on bigger things. And it's difficult to really show that to women because they don't want to admit, like, hypergamy comes across as gold digging too eastly, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that level. It could just be you married him because he doesn't have any credit card debt.
Yeah, as I say, I know, like my uncle, you know, he was a tall guy living. Well, he was up in the UK back in the 60s and 70s. He looked like Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones. So, I mean, he got a lot of poontang, right, in the 60s and 70s, right? Like a lot of poontang, right? And he's not really, he hasn't been the best with money. I think he's doing better now, but I mean, he's almost 70. But yeah, he had the genetic stock. He had the moves like Jagger, right?
Right.
So yeah, as you say, women have to kind of pick and choose. And I mean, another story, I don't want to get into it by naming people, but I know this other guy, he's in his 90s or maybe late 80s, and his girlfriend is like 49, and she's got 2 kids, and this guy has money. Like, he's got a lot of money. He doesn't spend a lot of money, so it's not like, you know, they're living in the lap of luxury sort of thing. And he's not necessarily got the genetic stock. He's kind of short. I mean, he's fit for his age. He's very active. But yeah, as you say, it's selective, and at different stages in a woman's life, that selection process changes. You know, so when she's in her party years, she might look, you know, oh well, everybody's, you know, you might marry the rock star looking musician because he's got potential, but you're not really looking for stability. And then she might hit the epiphany stage of her life when she's coming up to 30s and stuff like that, and she realizes it's not working out. She might seek more stability. That, you know, she might give the beta a chance. If she's, you know, she's already fucked all the alphas, she might be looking for something more stable. Or maybe even later on in life, after the kids have been popped out and the menopause has kicked in, she might try to rekindle a little bit of that, you know, party girl side of it, you know, and we get the cougars. So it all, as you say, it is a spectrum, and it kind of depends on where the woman is at as well.
Yeah, it's a funny thing once you start to really look into all this. And I think I've told you before, when I one of the first couple times I went to like a bar or clubs kind of scene, just a dance floor, I could see like a whole, just, you were seeing like a whole spectrum of hypergamy going on in there, like just who women were dancing with, why they were dancing with them. You saw the cougars, you saw the party girls, and you saw the more, you know, you saw just different people doing different things. You know, it's kind of like you almost feel, I don't know, either you're feeling like the Neo watching like the code of the Matrix moving along, or you're like kind of like a Bradley Cooper in Limitless, just seeing sort of, you know,
the patterns.
Yeah. It's funny.
It is funny. I like. I mean, I don't think there's ever a better demonstration of hypergamy than the nightlife clubs and stuff like that. And for anybody who didn't know, the women dress up not to impress the guys, although, you know, the guys are usually very impressed. They're in competition with other women.
Yep.
And I used to use this quite effectively. So I used to have some female friends, not girlfriends, but female friends that were very good looking. And I would go out to the club with them, and I would be instantly qualified. Like, I'll be instantly, the minute I walk through the door with a woman, every other woman there is like, he's pre-approved. He's got a woman on his arm. He must be doing something right. Even if it's my cousin, right? Even if it's family, right? But the minute I walk through the door with a woman, the dynamic room change, and suddenly I'm an object of interest because the other women want to know, well, what am I doing to have this beautiful girl with me? And I mean, it's a cliche. Every time you always see it with the breakup stories, the guy's got the girlfriend, then suddenly all these women are interested in him. And the minute he breaks up and he figures, right, I'm gonna fuck around, I'm gonna have, play the field, all the women dry up. It's because you've lost your pre-approval, right?
Right. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's an interesting thing.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing. No, we were looking at a couple of stories, or just I mean, I'm kind of quoting on a couple of things I was reading this morning about how. So there was like a post on the unpopular opinion subreddit. There was a post called "Hypergamy is ruining society," and there was another thing here, or there's also the Ask the Red Pill subreddit. To asking like, okay, how real is hypergamy? Well, once you understand it, you can pretty much see it in a lot of places. But let's see here. So I found an interesting story here. There's a story of hypergamy. Let's see here if I can share this. Screen share. Let's see. Here we go. So, excuse me. So it says here, she left her boyfriend of 10 years because of hypergamy. Chad just pumped and dumped her. Now she is back with her old boyfriend again. She is upset that he won't marry her. So these are some of the issues that can actually happen because hypergamy has gone wrong. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Is this? Hold on. Hold on. Let me check on this. See if this is actually a legit story here. Here we go. 36-year-old female. Here we go. All right. So this is how hypergamy is kind of working from a female perspective. We'll briefly touch on this. So, yeah, because it was an archive thing. So, subreddit, women ask women over 30. Let's see. I dated him from 20 to 30. We lived together from 26 to 30. I broke up with him, broke his heart entirely. We were apart for 4 years, but always coming back to each other. And that time I had another serious relationship that didn't work out. We are back together for a year now, but he said he doesn't want to get married because if I left him again, he'd lose half his pension. He wants to have kids together but not get married. I won't have kids without being married. And now I'm sad because we both wanted to all along. And now I can't because he won't marry anyone. Now I'm also getting old and would have to break up with him, find someone new, and then hope that is going to be stable long term. I'm not sure what to do. I think I'm attractive for my age, but the man market is slim pickings, and I love my boyfriend. So it's
I mean, do we know what happened to that lady? Did she? Obviously, she dumped him.
I think that's where
got pregnant.
It kind of cuts off there. Right. So then some people are commenting before ending comments, no telling the truth and hurting feelings. Wait, wrong forum. Here we go. She met Chad, threw away a 10-year relationship over tingles. Talk about shitting the bed. It was all the boyfriend's fault because he isn't Chad. She pushed Chad for commitment and he kicked her to the curb. Unable to find a replacement, she went crawling back to her ex-boyfriend. Taking her back may not have been the smartest decision on his part. He, however, is smart enough to refuse to marry her. She destroyed him once and won't do it again, with or without another Chad waiting in the wings. She's lying about wanting to get married before having kids. Boyfriend is refusing marriage and kids with her. She's trying to lock her in her revenue stream, get her biological clock to stop its goddamn clanging. Kill two birds with one stone. She's whining about how shitty marriage market is for her. Now that she's played her part on it or anything, she's just unlucky in life. She claims to be attractive for her age. We all know that is code for kicked off the carousel. She's out of options and will try her baby trap BF as a last resort. He should get rid of her radioactive ass ASAP.
Oh man, that's tough.
So a couple things there's the carousel, basically that means the cock carousel, just the basic party girl mentality, behavior of just fucking every cock she comes across. This is the
usually
problem.
alpha cock, right? Yeah.
Yeah, this is the problem with hypergamy. Is women are now hypergamy is sort of morphing into trying to become like male mating strategy, unlimited sexuality, unlimited access, and female biology just doesn't really work so well with that. And also because of this, it changes the perception of women too. It's ruining it for women because now every woman could be a slut, and men are still maintaining a lot of their sort of social stigma towards sluts. Just, I'm not going to marry one, have kids with one, and I'm not going to just screw myself over. I mean, it's, you have women that are growing up into their early 20s into late 20s, and even to now this woman in her mid 30s, playing what is modern day what's unfettered hypergamy. Just, it ruins things for her, and it's even ruined things for him.
Well, we don't know if it's. I mean, she's definitely hurt him, but
she's
I think
definitely hurt him. But
yeah.
I mean, I get what you're saying. Unfettered hypergamy is hurting women.
Yeah,
really,
a lot more than it's hurting men.
Because as much as we're talking about sort of the blue pill, sort of beta conditioning of men, you're also having a basically feminist conditioning of women. Women growing up thinking, I don't need no man. I can do what I want all the way through their 20s. And then once they approach 30s, then they realize, oh crap, the biological clock is ticking. And as much as women want to go and say, well, it's different for every woman, they can obviously have kids into their 30s. And well, of course they can. It's just not optimal.
Some even some into their 40s. I know some women that have kids in their 40s.
It's just that clock ticks a little bit louder than the male clock.
The baby rabies.
I was just listening to Rollo Tomasi talking about how basically male sort of sexual drive and fertility goes well into old age. A lot of men are conditioned to believe that male sexual drive stops at like 50 or something. When he got an email from a guy who was 70 saying he just started listening to Rollo's stuff and realized he actually still had sexual drive at 70.
Yeah, the guy I mentioned, he was in his 80s with his 40-something-year-old girlfriend, and he's still banging it out, right? So I think he's almost 90. I think like either he is or he's about to be 90. So yeah. And I know one guy, he had his, well, I don't know how many kids he's had, but he had a kid at 65. And I mean, there you go, right? So you're right. Our longevity for sexual desire and reproduction goes well past the fertility period of women.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge, right? Because she has to be selective in her breeding. This is where hypergamy comes in. And again, hypergamy by itself is not necessarily bad. Now that it's been coupled with modern feminism, it's become a monster unto itself. And you're having
more and more women going into their 30s
and 40s.
Yeah, with essentially what is considered just slut reputation. And that doesn't go over well for men. Men don't want that. Or men.
No, I mean, that's it. It's like you'd hear this a lot, especially in the church circles. The single moms seem to always end up in church, right? And they always talk about, women always say, well, if it was a real man, he would, marry that woman even though she's got kids. And, he would basically do this Captain Save-A-Ho schema and prove that he's a real man because the other man ran off and whatever, right? That's called feminine imperative. They're trying to basically coerce men into picking up the scraps of another man and take responsibility financially and otherwise for raising another man's son. That's not in our biological interest.
Someone actually, there's a reason there's a biological, uh, a term used among talking about animals, cuckoldry among animals.
Correct.
I actually someone I had a discussion with someone about this, and they I'll tell you, you know about this. So there's a Facebook group that I'm in where I talk to a lot of different people that I can't mention by name or anything, but there was a couple in there who where he's like a year older than me. She's in her 30s. Now she's definitely maintained her youth, like the wall hasn't hit her that hard. She's actually, can be fairly good looking depending upon, in some ways. So, but she has a child and they are now having a kid. And some people basically there's sort of a running gag that he's a cuck because he's taking over this previous child from someone else, and they're married and they're having another kid. And anyways, so some men who have actually come up and said like, well, that's how can you call him a cup or a beta or whatever? Like that should be considered the most alpha thing to like be a man and take responsibility and take care of people. Like, well, yeah, taking care of people is an alpha thing, but taking care of something that wasn't yours, that's something you didn't start for the sake of, you know, being a good
Yeah,
guy and some pussy. It's
it's not even that. It's rewarding the bad behavior. This is what the issue with it is, right? So, all right, like I have a friend. She's a single mom, and she bitches about the ex-husband all the time, and he's a cunt. He's an asshole. Every word in the book. But I have to constantly stop and remind her, you chose him to be your husband. So what does that say about your abilities to vet your mate? Right. But of course, she doesn't want to take responsibility for that. So
solipsism.
It's solipsism, right? It's all about her and her oppression and how badly he treats her. But no, she played a part in that. And this is it. So women make bad choices. So party girl fucks the alpha. Alpha's a deadbeat dad, abandons the kids, and now society, tries the feminine imperative tries to convince men who are not going to abandon the kids that you should take on the responsibility of cleaning up her mess.
Yeah, all the responsibility without any of the authority. Because
Correct.
if anything happens with this marriage, which probably won't, but just from this couple that I know, but if something ever were to happen, she has all the authority and he has all the responsibility.
Correct. And this is the thing for the men, it's not worth the squeeze in the sense because he will never be number one. He will always be number two behind the child of this other man. So it's not always in the best end. Now I applaud men who do it. If that's your thing, more power to you. It's not my thing. I mean, I've dated a couple single moms and stuff like that, and I'm not going to marry them, but but it's this is the conditioning, and this is the result again of feminism and endorsing sexual promiscuity and all these other things. This is the fallout, and now they're trying to get men to clean it up.
Yeah. So in looking at, I want to be clear about for the listeners too, is the difference when we talk about red pill, it's not sort of, it's important to be clear that you're not we're not involving any sort of um, morality in it. You have to be careful when you're talking about that because morally speaking, yeah, it's always best to take care of people, to take responsibility, to help people. Obviously, yes. But the red pill is more looking at sort of the social dynamics, looking at the sort of how we've been biologically driven. What is actually the best thing to do in terms of mating strategies? And from that standpoint, cuckoldry is one of the worst things you can do, taking over another man's child. Now, morally, it's obviously a good thing. You want to take care of a woman, take care of the child, help them out. Great. I think, morally speaking, it's great. But in the red pill community, it's clear that that is not the best move for your best sort of, mating strategy. You want to find basically the best woman for a man would just be either the least, if a young, fertile, virgin, gorgeous woman that can bear children.
I don't necessarily think they have to be a virgin, but
they don't have to be. But I mean, that is the most ideal.
Yeah, it's probably. And I'll make the distinction on this as well. This is different from adoption, right? Like some people might pick issue with this. It's like, oh my God, they have so many children in orphanages and stuff like that. Yes, but the children in adoption are not the offspring of your spouse, right? So that was two parents that decided to give a child up for adoption. Neither of you will have the same kind of investment in the child, that you can both love the child equally and still maintain the partnership and the esteem of your partner. But if one of you has a child biologically and the other one doesn't, and he's entering the frame, the child in the female's eyes will always take primacy. And that's the difference. Because
I see that all the time on dating profiles, 3-year-old daughter, and she's my world, and if you can't accept that, you can't be with us, kind of thing.
That's fine. I won't.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, and it's not to necessarily say like children don't take any primacy, but
and again, for the man, remember, he's generally speaking, he will be financially providing for the two of them. So he has to provide for the wife, instant fatherhood for him. He's got to provide for the child that isn't biologically him. I'm not saying it can't work. There are cases where it's really it has worked and stuff like that. It's just, this is not the ideal way to build the family and society.
We are still animals, and we still have behaviors that reflect on larger scales. So on a macro level of this type of behavior is not ideal. It could cause more problems down the line. On a micro level, on an individual level, great. Like Brook is saying, we definitely good for people that want to do that. It's just not the most ideal,
Correct.
But we are coming up on our time here, Brook. Anything else you wanted to add?
No. I think we kind of hit the nail on the head. I mean, there's a lot that could be said about this topic, about feminine nature, female imperative.
And we'll definitely be touching on that in the future, though.
Yeah, I feel now that we are independent and we can be as offensive as we want to be, we should definitely go after it.
We were going to talk about this anyways. I wanted to be clear that we just things like this were probably part of it too. Just the direction, like we like talking about a lot of different things, and we don't want to be necessarily. I mean, we were going to talk about these things regardless. I want everyone to know that. It's just we want to be able to do it whenever we want to do it. If there's not a lot of news and we just want to talk about whatever. So, but yeah, thanks everyone for joining us once again. Do check out the links below for, like I said, we're going to be setting up some, means that people could basically pledge a monthly donation to us to help fund this. We did put in a little bit of, we have put in a lot of effort and as well as a little bit of money to improve the quality of the show. And I mean, really, we would love to put out more content as well for people who do want to be pledged to us as well. So definitely check that out. Subscribe to the channel as well as subscribe to the podcast on the various platforms we'll be putting this on. But once again, thanks everyone for joining us. This is our 35th episode. And we will, of course, be back again next Monday, 11 o'clock Central Time.
Thanks for watching, guys.